Canada, I'm Hugh Hewitt. Good morning from Studio West, where it's finally dry and might actually break 60 degrees today. I'm back in the classroom, looking forward. I love Tuesdays and Thursdays when I teach, although by the end of the day, I am really ready for anything other than news or the law. Let me run down the headlines for you. First Lady Jill Biden has 2 cancerous skin lesions removed yesterday and Mohs surgery. Now, that for me is almost a quarterly affair, given that I'm pale as Casper the Ghost and used to lifeguard and put on no sunscreen at all because we were stupid about this stuff in the early 70s. So the best of luck to First Lady Biden. It's basal cell, I believe, or squamous cell. It's not melanoma. And even today, most melanoma people recover if they get it early. So I would like everyone to follow the First Lady's example and go see a dermatologist, have the full body check. If you've got anything at all amiss, don't wait around. It only gets bad if you wait around. Mohs isn't bad, it just takes forever. It stings a little bit, but it doesn't kill you. There's been a second tranche of Biden classified documents found that the current president spirited away from the White House when he was vice president. It's covered in the Washington Post. Second Biden search yields additional classified documents. It's covered in the New York Times. Discovery of more classified records raises questions over Biden's handling of the documents. It's covered in the Wall Street Journal. Biden aides discover additional classified documents at second location. I think I have told you 100 times, if I've told you once, I am not surprised. I wasn't surprised that Trump had them. I'm not surprised that Biden has them. I wouldn't be surprised if Obama has them. I doubt very much that Clinton doesn't have them, because all presidents end up taking, under the vaguely worded and almost impossible to apply Presidential Records Act, some documents with them. Vice presidents are a little bit more difficult because the president always has in their back pocket declassification authority. In any event, there is one set of rules for when you appoint a special counsel, the special counsel regulations. Attorney General Merrick Garland appointed special counsel Jack Smith to look into President Trump's classified documents, and therefore those regulations met up with the facts of classified documents being in the possession of a former president, and it triggered a special counsel. Now we have 2 different occasions, 2 different sets of documents, and 0 special counsels for Joe Biden. So you tell me what that means. To me, that means a double standard, and it means, first of all, the media's got to bear it, and they don't know anything. If you're, Trump had nuclear secret. We don't know that. That's nonsense. Someone leaked that. We don't know what he had. Nobody knows what he had. I suspect, because I've been told, but I don't know, he had the letter from Youngkin L, which is his, as far as I'm concerned. He could have declassified that in his mind. He showed it to like 1 million people in the Oval Office. So it's all nonsense. The paper stuff is all nonsense. It's the National Archives liberals getting themselves into trouble by trying to get President Trump into trouble, and now they've got a special counsel for Trump. And Jack Smith should have been named 2 days ago, the day of the revelation of the story, or 3 days ago, to be the special counsel in charge of the Biden documents, so that one lawyer is applying one standard to the different sets of documents so that we do not have the appearance of political impropriety. But here's what Josh Hawley said about that last night on Hannity, cut 15.
Because that's exactly what Merrick Garland has done to Donald Trump. And Sean, as you were just saying a second ago, it can't be that we have 2 tiers of justice in this country. It can't be that there's one rule for Republicans and a different rule for Democrats. You know, Merrick Garland said, we have to have a special prosecutor for Trump. Well, that means we've got to have one for Biden. It's the same thing. And arguably, it's worse for Biden because, as you say, he couldn't declassify. Whatever else we know is true, we know that he didn't have the power on his own as VP to declassify these documents. So listen, the Democrats say they're all for equity. Well, what's equitable here is that there be a special counsel.
That's it in a nutshell. By the way, it doesn't matter what's in the documents. It doesn't matter what they decide about the document. It's how the special counsel regulations operate. They took the fact of classified documents being in Trump's possession, reviewed the special counsel regulations, and found they were triggered. That's it. That's all. It's over. Both men are running for president. Both ought to have a special counsel looking at what they took away from the White House and whether or not those are chargeable offenses. One standard. Right now we have a double standard because the Democrat, Merrick Garland, is protecting Democrat Joe Biden. No, the Department of Justice cannot be trusted in this. There are lots more stories about The special counsel investigation Trump faces headwind. The special counsel investigating Trump faces headwinds few others have. No, he doesn't. It's an easy case. He's got this bulldog reputation, blah, 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 blah. Just do your job. You don't need to be a media hero. Jack Smith is not giving interviews. This should be like a 3-week matter. There's a statute. There are documents where they've broken. Do you want to charge? It really isn't that complicated. Hunter Biden's tangled tale comes front and center. That's in the New York Times this morning. Really? The New York Times just figured that out? Hunter Biden's tangled tale comes front and center. You know why? Because the election are over. The 2020 election, they suffocated it. 2022 election, they managed to suffocate it and the classified documents until after it was over. Now they hope to get it out. They'll raise it early as possible. It'll be dead by the time 2024 comes along. But then again, that's really not going to be the issue of 2024, is it? Great Wall Street Journal editorial this morning. Texas teaches California a budget lesson. Now, both those states went through COVID. Both those states got a whole bunch of aid and assistance from the federal government. Sacramento has a $22.5 billion deficit under the expert management of Gavin Newsom. Governor Abbott has a $32.7 billion surplus. Tell me which state you'd rather live in. Prince Harry's book, Spare, sells over $1.4 million in U.S., UK, and Canada on first day, which tells me that there are 1.4 million U.S. American, U.S., Canadian, and UK people who ought not to be voting. Seriously, friends, Harry interests you that much? That's nuts. Vladimir Putin demoted General Armageddon. That's his nickname. Sergei Surovikin got demoted. And Russia replaces commander for Ukraine war as signs of dissension grow, as the New York Times covering it. And then Jeff Beck died. Look, I don't want to talk about what it's like to play bass for Jeff Beck. I just want to say he deserves every headline he gets. Virtuoso rock guitarist dies at 78. Farmer Yardbirds musician jumped between genres while collaborating with Macy Gray, Buddy Guy, Winona Judd, Cyndi Lauper, and Lucienne Pavarotti. Now, if you ever play bass with these folks, you'll have a different opinion of who's the greatest, but he's clearly in the top five. Let me go and play for you, if I can, Kevin McCarthy on George Santos, because I have a take on George Santos, which I'll give to you after the McCarthy clip he was asked about on Fox News, cut number 2.
The voters are the power. The voters made the decision, and he has the right to serve here. If there is something that rises to the occasion that he did something wrong, then we'll deal with that at that time.
Exactly the right answer. I don't know if George Santos committed a crime. If he didn't commit a crime, he certainly lied. But if you ask me, Ilhan Omar has been lying for years about pretty much everything that Ilhan Omar has said, and she's in there. AOC doesn't lie intentionally, doesn't know anything. But you see the media descending on George Santos because they like the lies. They understand the lies that he told. He's full of lies. But he got elected. The way to deal with this, absent criminality, is to leave him elected and leave it up to the voters. And he's going to get a committee. He got elected. He got elected by lying. Should he resign? No. Why? Because Democrats want the seat. It's a Democratic seat. They think they can win a special election after all the nonsense going on. Don't give him the seat. This is politics, people. He's a vote. And the next time there's an election, we need to fight it on even turf. He'll have to defend himself in a primary. He ought to make a full and public apology. He is quite the expert liar. But should he quit? No. Because if lying is a reason to quit, if lying has to be the reason you go up, I want to start with Elizabeth Warren and Cherokee Nation. All right? So if lying, because Elizabeth Warren got her first job and every job because she lied. Taking other people's jobs. Lied. So if we're going to start using lying, we're going to go to Senator Blumenthal serving in combat in Vietnam. No, lie. So if lying is the standard, we should start with the people who have been benefit from their lies the longest, not just George Santos. Their answer is he lied more. Really? Did he lie more? I don't think so. I think those lies go much more to important jobs in much more obvious ways and much greater ambitions. Is Bernie Sanders lying? He certainly is to me. He's lying that socialism actually works. He won't even deal with the truth of everywhere it failed. So lying, if that disqualifies someone from serving in Congress, I'm not going to let the New York Times decide that. Let voters decide that. Heck, George Santos might end up reelected. I don't know. I'll be back. The Nixon Library last night had Ro Khanna, Mike Pompeo, and Robert O'Brien, plus the seminar members talking China, and you'll hear that here on the Hugh Hewitt Show. Welcome back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt. Last night, the Nixon seminar met. Ro Khanna, a Democrat from Silicon Valley, was the guest of Chairman Michael Pompeo, and Robert O'Brien, the former Secretary of State and the former National Security Advisor, meet monthly with 15 of the leading national security experts via the Nixon Foundation, Nixon Library. Here's Secretary Pompeo kicking off the conversation with Ro Khanna. Cut number 8.
If you looked at it in the most broad sense, we're still in a pretty good place. And if you looked at our capacity, the rate of change, our ability to absorb, adapt, apply these technologies, we're still in a pretty good place. But it is equally the case that one should never rest on their laurels, especially when it comes to someone like the Chinese Communist Party that is not going to play the long game and invest and build it, but rather just simply steal it and copy it and go about obtaining that capability, that information, and sometimes in ways that are unlawful, steal it. Other times they just give money to our universities and take it outright because, well, they were part of the research team. And so we need to be mindful to protect and preserve these technologies for America's national security interests and for that of our security partners as well. And then I guess the last thing I'd say here too, technology is in some sense agnostic, and we can talk about really great uses of different pieces of technology and really dangerous uses as well. And there is a substantive role for the federal government to, when that technology is being used in a way that is inconsistent with American national security, to grab it, to rein it back in. I'm sure we'll spend a lot of time talking about the different tools, but whether that is investment review processes like CFIUS, or the capacity to do what Representative Khanna spoke about, which is to make sure that there is, in fact, viewpoint neutrality, that we don't have huge arms of the private sector being shanghaied by the United States government along a particular political viewpoint, is something that President Nixon couldn't even have thought about. It was so much more diverse, so much more unique, so much more tailored and nuanced. And today, that the difference between a news organization and a bulletin board, right? That sometimes Facebook and Twitter want to tell you they're just a place to post, and there's other times it is clear they are pushing particular narratives. And you got to fish or cut bait. You're either an editor or a conduit of communication. And when they try to play the line, the government has a responsibility to try and step in to make sure that all of those viewpoints, to the congressman's point, all of those viewpoints are being heard, whether they're going after the Secretary of State or applauding what it is someone's doing.
Now, on that point, they spent a lot of time talking about free speech last night, and Ro Khanna came in on Twitter, and under the old regime of Twitter, the suppression of viewpoints with which it disagreed. Cut number 9.
I think it's shared among some, but I think it is more important today than ever before. And let me explain why. If the country is so polarized, where we have differences of opinion about our way of life, certainly the last thing you want to do is tell someone, don't speak. We don't want to hear what you have to say. We've got to find a way of listening to each other and doing so with an open mind. And that's been the hallmark of American democracy. It's what makes us such an exceptional nation. One of the points I made to Twitter and Facebook executives is you're brilliant at technology, but you just started thinking about speech issues 5 years ago. We have a tradition of almost 250 years of the best jurisprudence on First Amendment and free speech in the history of humanity. They're jurists who've struggled with these issues for decades. So yes, you don't legally have to adopt First Amendment principles. You're a private actor. But given how many people are on the public square, why don't you look to some of those First Amendment principles in shaping your platforms? And that you do have a duty to democracy. One of the points I make is with newspapers like the Wall Street Journal that published my op-ed. If all they cared about was attention maximization, they would never publish an op-ed by me. They'd publish every op-ed by me.
Let me pause on that. That is what great platforms do. This platform is open to any Democrat anytime. Congressman Khan has been on here before. Any Democrat anytime. It's always civil. They're always wrong, of course, but I'm always eager to hear why they're wrong and perhaps persuade them. And that's why Ro Khan is an important voice in Congress. Former National Security Advisor Robert O'Brien then got the conversation started on TikTok. And this is what I really want you to hear. Cut number 10.
Well, you're here. Let me make one quick point. I'm sure we'll talk about other issues as we follow. When we're talking about big tech, we've got to focus on the low-hanging fruit. And the low-hanging fruit right here and right now is the fact that the Chinese Communist Party has basically state-owned or state-controlled industries and sectors and companies, big national champions like ByteDance and TikTok and WeChat that are active here in the United States. Whereas Facebook, Twitter, Google are not active in China. There's no reciprocity. And this is something we worked on in the Trump administration, and Mike worked on it with diplomatic rules, and we worked on it with trade rules at the White House. There's no reciprocity here. The Chinese social media is used here, and it's used as a tool of the PRC and the CCP. Number one, WeChat, they use that to spy on dissidents and spy on expats and bully students and anyone who's interested in anyone of Chinese descent who's on WeChat is monitored and surveilled and bullied on WeChat here in America. We should never let that happen. And TikTok is the most massive own goal that we're scoring ever, to use a soccer term. TikTok is downloading and just devouring all of our personal data, biometric data, location data. They're tracking where journalists are. They're tracking where soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines are who have the TikTok app on their phone. The fact that we allow TikTok to be here and to operate is really a scandal. And I understand why it's happening, because there's some big Wall Street investors and some big VC venture capitalists in Silicon Valley that invested in TikTok. And the only way they'll secure a big return on their investment is if TikTok is allowed to stay in America and allowed to continue to collect data on Americans and surveil us for the Communist Party. So there's plenty that we need to talk about with American big tech and the interaction between the FBI, for example, and other agencies and our companies. But the low-hanging fruit is to first of all, get rid of the Chinese social media that's pervasive in this country.
Amen, Robert O'Brien. Take the easy win. Ro Khan, then the Democrat from Silicon Valley on TikTok, cut number 11.
I share Ambassador O'Brien's concerns and the concerns that Secretary Pompeo voiced at the end of the Trump administration about TikTok. And I actually was supportive of the proposal to force the sale of TikTok to an American company. I thought that was a elegant solution. Look, there are millions of American young folks who are on TikTok. It will be hard to just ban it, but there's no reason that data should be getting anywhere close to the Chinese Communist Party. And it's millions of people who are having their data collected. So I know that there's been a proposal to sell it. The Biden administration has been looking at, well, can we have the servers in the United States? Can we make sure the data doesn't leave the United States? Can we have privacy laws in the United States? But my view is let's make sure that if you want to have TikTok, that we have it owned by an American company. And then let's make sure we have strong data privacy laws.
Now, let's go to immediately after that. Congressman Michael Waltz, who's on the Armed Services Committee, cut number 12, adds to the TikTok conversation.
Not a heck of a lot to add to what Ambassador O'Brien, and I'm glad to hear my colleague and friend Ro Khan add. And I don't know if I missed this portion of the discussion, but the Indian government has banned it along with dozens of other Chinese apps, and I think we should follow suit. I led a letter to the House Administration Office for, at a minimum, members of Congress to have it off of their devices, which recent legislation did not cover. It only covered the executive branch. So I think we're making progress. We're sounding the alarm bells. I'm still having a heck of a hard time with some members of my family. But when I show them the documents that their passwords, their bank accounts, their biometrics, everything is being taken, it helps. Where I think we need to improve our narrative is really helping people understand what an adversary with AI can do with that data. Because even I just had an aunt say, "Why do I care?" fine, they can have it. Facebook takes it too. So we've got a ways to go in our narrative, but I think we're making progress.
Yeah, you see, if you put your password into TikTok, the Chinese Communist Party has it. And if you have the same kind of tendency from that password, AI can figure out what you're using for other passwords. It's just obvious. Let's close this segment with Ro Khanna on the same subject of economic patriotism. Congressman Khanna, cut number 13.
Well, I'd say two things. I think there is a consensus, at least on forcing the sale, which my census was the Trump administration proposal, and we should see that through in this Congress, and this way people can stay on TikTok as an app, but it would be owned by an American company. I also just want to briefly address the point about antitrust. I think, as a representative of Silicon Valley, I am incredibly proud of the innovation and technology that the Valley has provided the country in collaboration with DARPA and investments in technology. And I want America to stay at the forefront of that. So just bashing tech, I think, will hurt us in terms of our national security and our ability to produce wealth. But we do need to have sensible antitrust so that companies aren't disallowing alternative platforms for emerging or privileging their own products. And I think the question is, how do we have a scalpel that allows for innovation and competitive open market without just bashing and reflexively breaking up tech companies? To your point about China, look, here's my concern with what China has done. For 40 years, we basically let our production leave this country. And we said we didn't care. Andy Grove, who was the CEO of Intel, was warning. He was crying out in 2010, what are you doing? We've lost 70,000 factories in America. We've seen our trade deficit go from 80 billion to 400 billion. We've seen the Chinese Communist Party fund systematically industry after industry, steel, aluminum, the industries in drug production. And I think what the real challenge to America is, how do we get that production and innovation back? How do we use technology to make sure that we're producing in this country in partnership with government and business? I call it economic patriotism. There are people on the right who have articulated a version of wanting to bring manufacturing back. I really believe that is a place that in as divided a government we have, that we can find common ground for the renewal of American production, for the renewal of American industry, and to me, that is the real competitive challenge.
That is Ro Khanna at the Nixon seminar. All of it is online. I think maybe the most important one they've had, other than Peter Thiel, or up there with Peter Thiel, when they bring in people from the other side of the aisle and they talk about tech and China, that Nixon Foundation, Nixon seminar. Salute to Secretary Pompeo and National Security Advisor O'Brien for having Ro Khanna, and salute to Ro Khanna for being there. I hope the man runs for Senate, because we'll end up with two Democrats. We might as well have one who's smart. Stay tuned. Good morning, Glory America. Bonjour, hi, Canada. I'm Hugh Hewitt, live from the West Coast, joined by Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin. Good morning, Governor. Welcome back to the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Well, good morning, Hugh. It's always such a pleasure to be with you, and good morning from the East Coast.
Well, I want to begin by laying out a fact set for our audience for you to comment on. Every year, only about 3% of high school students take something called the PSAT, the National Merit Scholarship Test. 34,000 of those students get a commendation. 15,000 of those students get an award called a finalist. And then 1,000 of those students get the semifinalist award, which is a Willy Wonka golden ticket into great colleges. It really matters a lot. In at least 3 Northern Virginia high school, those students did not learn that they were National Merit semifinalists until after their application season had opened and in some places closed. Governor, I am outraged about that. What say you?
Well, we're outraged as well. And, of course, it started at the Thomas Jefferson School of Math and Technology, which is one of the best, if not the best school in the nation, where we are celebrating excellence. And we see a principal that allegedly withhold these notifications, and now we're seeing it happen at other schools across Fairfax County. Listen, I've asked our Attorney General, and he has broadened his investigation to get to the bottom of this. And Attorney General Jason Miyares is doing a great job. His work in Loudoun County exposed the cover-up with regards to the sexual assaults of young women in Loudoun County schools, and a superintendent lost his job appropriately and was indicted. And I think the same level of scrutiny needs to be brought here. This is possibly a violation of Virginia's Human Rights Act. And we've got a real challenge here with students who have done extraordinarily well in the name of equity, being disadvantaged in their own applications because they weren't told about their accomplishments. There is a superintendent of the Fairfax County Schools who has clearly stated her position that she wants equal outcomes for all students at any cost. She funded a consultant that came in with $450,000 of taxpayer money. This is what you get when you do that, is you get a system now that wants to suppress the grand performance of some students so other ones don't feel bad. This is absolutely an anathema. And
now, Governor,
we have to go to work here and make sure that we first understand all of these facts, but we put an end to it in Virginia.
I want people to understand, when I first read the story, and it was Thomas Jefferson High School, I thought some principal had gone off the rails because in essence, it denies opportunity to the most skilled students in the class. It's really, to be a National Merit semifinalist is a golden ticket for college. You don't get told the early admission comes and goes. Your schools aren't notified. 49 other states are notifying it. One, the Thomas Jefferson High School. But then when it happens to two more high schools in the same district, my very, very slow to seize on conspiracy mind, I just reject it generally. I think to myself, that's a pattern in practice. That's not a one-off. Did the other two schools, and I believe they are Langley High School and Westfield High School, when they joined Thomas Jefferson in revealing that they had also screwed their students, did your alarm bell go off even louder?
Absolutely. And as I said, Hugh, our Attorney General, Jason Miyares, is digging in now. He's got a full investigation of the entire county. He's going to get to the bottom of this. But what you've just described is clearly unacceptable. And what we're hearing from parents, and particularly the fact that at Thomas Jefferson, a disproportionate amount of the students there are of Asian descent. This is racism the other direction, and we've got real work to understand what's happened here. You know, Hugh, the problem we're seeing is that over the course of the last few years, we have watched this pursuit of equal outcomes for students bring down Virginia's expectations for our children. We went from having the highest standards in the nation to the lowest standards of the nation. And we have worked with our State Board of Education to return them back to the highest standards. We're on that march. We are revising our history standards to the best in the nation, so we'll teach all of our history, the good and the bad. We're standing up for parents' rights in the classroom. This is one of the most critical moments in our administration, and I think in Virginia's education, to get parents back at the forefront of their children's education. And for parents to all of a sudden be the ones that have to discover that their children had performed at an exceptional level and weren't told is a violation of everything we believe.
You know, I'm kind of sensitive to this because long ago and far away, I got into Harvard because I was a National Merit semifinalist. Otherwise, a kid from Ohio doesn't make it. And so some people aren't gifted in athletics as you were. I believe you got scholarship to Baylor. Am I right about that? Because you could play some hoops?
I went to Rice, and Baylor was one of our great rivals, and we beat Baylor.
Okay. You had to get that in, didn't you? So some people have advantages. They're great violinists. Some people are good test takers. Other people are athletes. But to take the legs off, it's probably only 100 students, but they crushed them. Early admissions matter, don't they, Governor?
They do. They do, and it is just not right. It is just not right. And I do believe that the work that the Attorney General will do will shine a bright light here.
All right, I want to go to something you mentioned. This is the important, we see the tip of the iceberg, the screwed students. But the bottom of the iceberg is this company called Performance Fact, Inc., based in Oakland, which received a $455,000 grant from Fairfax County Public Schools for equity training, which included an equity-centered strategic plan. The individual who runs this said the equity imperative is to give each student what they need to meet equal outcomes. You know, Governor, that's impossible. I can't play basketball against you. It's the end of the day in 1978. Well, you're younger than I am, so I might have been able to beat you because I'm 10 years older than you, back in the day. But You can't have equal outcomes. That is, by definition, insanity.
It strikes at the heart of the difference between the left, liberal, progressives and America. And America is a nation of striving, of aspiring, of putting forth everything we have in order to bring our dreams to the forefront, not to demand equal outcomes. In Virginia, we're pressing hard to raise the ceiling of education, but also the floor, because there are students that need help as well. But we cannot limit the dreams of our children. This is the systematic effort by the left liberal Democrats in order to try to put a cap on America and on Virginia. We're not going to have it.
So, Governor, I want to conclude by asking you.
One of the big things we are striving for is to return Virginia's expectations for our children to the top of the nation. We went from the top, they lowered our standards to the bottom, and we are putting them right back up to the top to stretch our kids and to celebrate exceptionalism.
So my last question, Governor, this is Fairfax County. They have a history of problems. Are you going to ask the Attorney General, or will another of the Youngkin team be looking at the other counties to make sure that no similar punishment of excellence occurred in any other county besides? It might just be that Fairfax County is infected with the desire to punish the excellent, but are you looking at the other counties in Virginia? Because where there's one equity, diversity, and inclusion expert consultant at $500,000, there's probably more, because they're networked up, right? These superintendents talk to each other. I worry that there are other counties doing the same thing in the Commonwealth.
Well, Hugh, we're starting with Fairfax County. It's a big county, and we've got a comprehensive effort that the Attorney General is working to get to the bottom of it. We have seen this. We have seen the same effort that his office put forth in Loudoun County with the sexual assault cases there, and we have put all the superintendents across Virginia on notice. We expect for you to abide by the laws of Virginia, not to make them up yourself, but to abide by the laws of Virginia, and not to diminish the achievements of our children. And it's clear in the Commonwealth of Virginia that parents matter, and we're going to continue to go to work for them every single day.
That's my governor, Governor Glenn Youngkin. Thank you for joining me early, and I'm glad you're on this, and I hope you follow it through, because not all of us can play basketball, and let the record show Rice beat Baylor. Every year, Governor? Every year?
Not every year.
Thank you, Governor Glenn Youngkin. Just wanted to make sure that the record was full and complete there, because I know I've got Carl as a Baylor Bear, and he's sad because the Steelers didn't make the playoffs, and Carl is often sad because things bad. He's a Pirates fan, but he loves the Baylor Bears, so I just wanted to make sure. Rice doesn't beat him every year. When I come back, America, if you have a phone call on that, 1-800-520-1234. If you are a parent and you are upset by that, you can call me, 1-800-520-1234. I'm going to put that into the grand old pod today. This is what Republicans have to run on. They have to run on excellence and on meritocracy. And I don't care if it's Asian Americans, white Americans, black Americans, yellow Americans, red Americans, checkered Americans. If you're good, you're good. And we ought to just establish a standard and stick with it and punish those who want to destroy excellence in America. I am Hugh Hewitt. Stay with us. Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. I want to let you know, I firmly believe smart does not have a color. Smart does not have a race. And I learned that early on with a guy named Charles Walker, who was on my speech and debate team. Black kid, high school, better at it than me. Better. I learned at Harvard because my tutor, junior and sophomore year, was Alan Keyes, a brilliant man who lacks brakes and whose political career was a disaster. But Alan could speak like a dozen languages. He was an opera singer and just a gifted political theorist. Black guy. And I have learned again and again and again, excellence in academics has no color. It does require work. I am so angry that individual principals and a school district decided they would cut the knees off of students who excel at one thing. And they may be good athletes. Maybe they got into school. They could also play soccer. But maybe that's all they do. Maybe they're just bookworms. Maybe that's it. Lisa in Florida, what do you think?
I cannot believe this. I'm driving into work, and I'm hearing this now, and I am livid. My son is a National Merit Scholar. It changed our lives. It changed his life. It changed
Where'd he go?
when I'll be able to retire. He's at the University of Florida. Full ride.
Full ride. Thank you. It's not just about getting into Ivy Leagues. Everybody wants National Merit Scholars.
Absolutely. They're actually paying him with all the scholarships that he got to attend the university. It changed our life. We were looking everywhere. We had prepared to send him to college, but this was a game changer, and I cannot imagine somebody snatching that out from under him.
3 different high schools. What did you make? Do you think Governor Youngkin is doing the right thing by having the AG look into whether or not it's a violation of law?
Absolutely, 100%. I would be. I cannot even imagine what.
Don't even get me started. If that happened to my grandkids, they all go to school in Virginia, right? They're all, Now, I don't know if Genghis Kate is going to be sent to reform school or not, but when she gets to school, she's going to be a pretty smart gangster. But my scholar, this is just my granddaughter. She is so freaking smart. It scares me. And Kate is going to rob banks and in between. It's just. But they're not athletes, right? They didn't get those. Or their dad. Their dad is.
My son worked so hard for this. We were so proud of him. We could not have been more excited to, for him on, just as an individual, no matter what it did for us financially. It was just such an honor, and he worked so hard. It was a culmination of his entire school. It meant so much on just a strictly financial level.
Too bad he didn't go to a school with a good football program there. He's a Gator, so that's sad.
I know it's a shame. I'm a Clemson Tiger, so.
You are. Lisa, thank you. I want to go. Joined now by Congressman Chip Roy of Texas. Good morning, Congressman. How'd the CNBC hit go?
Yeah, it went fine. We were talking a little bit about stock trading with my Democrat colleague, Abigail Faber. But thanks. Sorry for the delay.
Well, I'm not a problem. I want to let people know I've known of Chip Roy for a long time. He's been a friend of the program in the back rooms for a long time. Here's the bio. Born in Maryland, grew up in Virginia, went to Loudon High School, which has been in the news lately. Went to UVA, so I didn't know anything about football. Got his JD from the University of Texas, so he still doesn't know anything about football, but he might have learned con law from Lino Graglia, so he's smart there. Clerked for Posner, which has got to be a nightmare. I clerked on the D.C. circuit, but Posner, woo. Assistant United States Attorney in the Eastern District of Texas. Ghostwriter. We have that in common. I've ghosted a couple of books for high-profile people, for Rick Perry, worked for Rick Perry, then went to work for Ted Cruz, then worked for the Texas Attorney General as a Texas Assistant Attorney General. He is a cancer survivor. He is now known to you, but I've known about him for a long time because at the Republican Study Committee gathering in Northern Virginia, when I was the guest speaker, Chip Roy raised his hand and went on about the national debt. And if I recall correctly, Congressman Roy, I told you that's not a winner. Is that? Do I remember that correctly?
Well, that's about right. Yeah, you nailed it. We had a good little exchange on that, and I'm right.
Well, I think you might be. I want to go. I don't want to look backwards. I always look forward. I told everyone we'd eventually get to yes because you were running the negotiation. I want to talk about the national debt crisis. Are you on the budget committee? Or are you in appropriation? Where did they land? Where have you landed, Congressman, on committees?
So I've not landed yet. In my first term, I was on the budget committee. I frankly, I got to be honest with you, I have backed away from making any asks because I was in the middle of negotiations and I didn't want it to be anything about me. So I've kind of left it in the hands of the speaker and folks to kind of figure out where we land between Rules Committee, Judiciary Committee, which I'm proud to serve on. That's that's where I can serve the best given my background. But we'll see. I'm open to a number of different options and just telling them, put me in, Coach.
I'd love to have you on the Weaponization Committee because you know how to do cross. And you know what? So many hearings are terrible, and you know this, like I know this. They don't know what they're doing when they ask questions.
Yeah, you're right. It's actually a real problem. Everybody just wants to give their 5-minute speech. I'm like, look, man, let's just get at it. And if it's a hostile witness, then treat it appropriately. If it's a friendly witness, then just give them the runway and throw it to them. So, look, we need to have good people on that committee. Jim Jordan, obviously, is the chair of Judiciary. Not sure exactly how he's decided to structure it, but happy to be on it if that's where put me in, Coach. There's a number of places I'm happy to serve.
Now, Congressman, I want to talk to you about the debt, particularly because this has been your issue for a long time. I mentioned the RSC thing because I think politically it doesn't resonate with people, but I know the national debt limit is a must-have. It's got to be raised, and therefore you can get something. And I've begun the conversation, what do we want, and how do we get every Republican to agree to message it correctly? Yesterday, I had one of your colleagues suggest maybe we roll back the 87,000 IRS agent appropriation as the must-have. I argued I'd like the border wall as the must-have. I don't really care, but I do want the messaging. What's Chip Roy? If you were the king of the forest, not queen, not duke, not earl, what would you make the number one ask in exchange for raising the debt limit?
All right, give me a little latitude here for a slightly long answer.
You got a lot of runway. Go for it.
Okay, well, thanks. So, number one, it's not the debt for the sake of the debt on the main issue that you raised. It's because I don't want to fund the bureaucrats and the tyrants who are screwing with us every single day. Like, I don't want to give more money to the IRS or the FBI or the, DHS to not secure a border. I want us to use the power of the purse effectively. Yes, I care about the debt. I don't want to rack up debt for our kids and grandkids, but I also don't want to fund bureaucrats. How do we deal with it? In my perfect world, the Senate wouldn't have just stuck it to us with a $1.7 trillion bill that lasts through September, because then we would have used the power of the purse earlier to deal with the border, to deal with some of the issues you just raised, like the IRS agents. But unfortunately, they did that. So now we don't really have any leverage other than the debt ceiling until October 1st. So I think that generally debt ceiling fights ought to be about structural reforms to limit spending so that, frankly, we stop racking up debt. That means, in other words, you connect the purpose of what you're trying to achieve to what you're taking as hostage. And I think that ought to be where we land. That being said, I do think the border crisis is something that ought to be part of that conversation, and we're going to be figuring that out over the next month or two. And again, I want my Democrat colleagues to come to the table. Let's work together to try to figure out how to hold down spending. Let's cap spending. Look, we can cap spending at FY22 levels, still keep defense where we just landed in December if we ratchet back non-defense discretionary to FY21 levels. Literally, that's the math. And
let me pause there for a second. I am a hawk. I'm a China hawk. I think we need 5% year-over-year real growth in the defense budget if we are not going to. I think we're in 1940, Congressman Roy. Are you of the opinion that we can exempt defense from a sequestration approach?
Well, how we land will be decided over the next 9 months. But start with the math that I just said, and it may not be perfect for what you said, but we just got a robust 10% increase in defense in that deal struck in December. So if we hold defense flat, I'm not saying that should be the goal, just listen to me. If we hold defense flat, and if we do non-defense discretionary at FY21 levels, we can then be capped at the FY22 levels that we agreed to last week. If defense hawks, and look, I'm kind of in between. I'm actually a defense hawk. I just don't like it being used as a weapon to basically make us keep racking up debt. We've got to be responsible. We got to choose on guns and butter. So I'm trying to fight both fights. If we need to increase defense spending, by the way, there's a lot of fat to cut over at the Defense Department. If we need to, then we can take those non-defense discretionary back to FY20 levels or FY19 levels. There are ways to do this and be responsible, but we have to set a ceiling, just like you live under in your house or in your business or the radio station.
Congressman, I want to talk about defense specifically and then go back to the debt limit. We are not funded fully. There isn't a single hawk in America who will tell you we are remotely close to where we need to deter Chinese aggression against Taiwan, against the first chain. Your colleagues have stood up, the Gallagher Committee. I'm glad they did. It will become obvious that we are simply behind on everything, including the Columbia class and the B-21. Even if you do what I hope you do, which is move money away from the Army and into the Navy, the Air Force, and Space Force, I'm all for reforms in the bureaucracy. I think having 10,000 lawyers at the Pentagon is insane. So there are places to make money, but the real money is the Columbia class. The real money is the B-21. The real money is in a 355-ship Navy that Donald Trump ran on. And I'm afraid the budget blunt instrument of sequestration set back this country's defenses 10 years. Now you have the floor. Because I'll go to battle with anyone on this. We are way underfunded on defense.
Well, I will remind you that the head of the Office of Management and Budget under President Trump was one of the lead advocates for a robust Navy and strengthening our national defense as it relates to the Navy. but we have to force the conversation in this town about moving the dollars. Because what happens right now, the defense hawks demand more defense money. The Democrats say we'll cut a deal for more non-defense discretionary. Nobody will touch mandatory, and we're destroying our country with $32 trillion of debt. Look, Hugh, you and I both know every single 50 basis point increase in interest rates, it's another $100 billion of interest. In this year, we're going to have more interest than we're spending on our national defense. We cannot keep doing it. We can be both a budget hawk and a defense hawk. Look, I understand the threat in China. Mike Gallagher is a great friend. I support us going to absolute war, so to speak, to make sure that our defense is strong enough and our country is strong enough to take on China. But look, we have to do it responsibly, and we haven't been. We're letting the swamp feed us. We're letting the swamp set the terms. We set the terms, Hugh, not the swamp.
Well, Congressman, I agree. I'm just saying on the substantive issue, Russ Vought or Mick Mulvaney, I'm not sure which one you're referring to, they are the reason that Donald Trump failed to get even close to 355 ships, especially the second budget of the Trump years. I followed it intimately well. Pompeo's a buddy, O'Brien's a buddy. I know what happened. OMB cut the numbers that the Pentagon demanded, and we do not have the ships that we need, and we do not have the capacity to build as a result of the OMB under Donald Trump. And we are in peril. We're in 1940 right now.
Hugh, I just disagree. You should have Russ on your show to debate this, because I was there when Russ was talking about making sure we have a strong Navy. What he was fighting was the entire town, which was, and by the way, the budget they put forward, I criticized because it didn't balance for 15 years. It didn't do enough. But that was because they were sympathetic to what you're talking about. The fact is, we can have the defense spending levels that we need to have if we check the non-defense discretionary.
Exactly.
Bureaucrats,
I agree.
etc. So let's have that fight. Let's do it.
Let's do it. Now let's get down to what we asked for. I believe that you could ask for the rollback of the administrative state that is represented by 87,000 IRS agents, because that makes a break with, we're not going to solve the debt by hiring more IRS agents to shake down small businesses. I think you can get that. I think you can get the fact that people crossing the border bring additional costs with them, whether people like it or not, whatever their position is. An open border means a rising national debt. I think you can tie those two together. Or you can do an entitlement reform. Raise the retirement age for people who are now 50 so they can plan. Raise the eligibility for Medicare up to 65 or 66 as opposed to 65. You can get something, but how do you get to what the ask is, Congressman Roy?
Well, we're working on that specifically. The first important part last week in working out to get this plane landed and structure our leadership and structure the message was to be serious about a commitment to limit spending while acknowledging we definitely need to have a strong defense. That's what we did last week. Now we need to have the conversations about how we do it. In my view, we need to go after as a singular message whacking non-defense discretionary and the woke and weaponized government against the American people. Make that the enemy, because it is the enemy. We can slash and burn a lot of these bureaucrats and still have the services necessary to run the federal government under Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution. We can have a strong national defense. We can go beat up DOD to be non-woke, go find savings, and then stretch and increase what we need to make sure we beat China. And then we need to have a long-term conversation about mandatory spending. You cannot balance in 10 years if you don't go deal with the fact that we've got people who need to go back to work. You've got stretching abuses under the disability program and Social Security. You've got all sorts of health care reforms you can do to make Medicare more affordable. And frankly, you got to freeze and hold down Medicaid spending, which was bloated under Obamacare. If you do those things, you have a chance to get us to some sort of path for balance and get the federal government out of the lives of the American people and restore prosperity and have a strong country with a strong national defense, which is what we're supposed to do.
Now, I agree with all that, Congressman, but the one thing I'm good at, and by the way, did you have Lino Graglia for con law?
I did, twice.
Good for you. That's why you know what you're talking about. So you know that to make an argument before SCOTUS, you've got to come in with one key argument, because you got to get the first message out of your mouth has got to be the winning message, because you don't get a second chance. The court goes all over the place. We need a message, not the long message you just gave. We need an ask. I don't know what the ask is. I know that it's got to be, if it's going to work, we have to define what the ask is for the debt limit.
Hugh, but I started that little rant with the actual answer. We must end woke and weaponized government and stop funding bureaucrats that are engaged in tyranny over the American people. That's what we must do.
What does that translate into in legislative language?
That means limit non-defense discretionary spending. That means go after a woke, FBI. That means go cut and slash and burn the various bureaucratic programs that you can go find. They're over funded. Frankly, Phil Gramm wrote a great piece in the Wall Street Journal about, 3 weeks ago, talking about how much all of those agencies were plussed up under COVID. How much, if you go back to 2019 levels, you can actually be able to get back to agencies that aren't as bloated and then get money over to defense where it ought to be. We can win that message. The American people don't want bureaucrats. They want defense, and they want to stop racking up debt. That's where the American people are.
I agree. But it's got to be, I think, capping non-discretionary defense spending at fiscal year 19, that is a great message. I can defend that. I can make that message. I can explain it. But the conference has to agree to it. And then we cannot have, half of the people run out and say that's not what we believe in. And then we got to get the Senate on board. You work for Senator Cornyn, one of the best messengers going in the Senate. Do you think there needs to be a small group of Republicans from the House to sit down with a small group of senators from the other side of the building and fix on the one paragraph message that we sell?
Already ahead of you, man. We're having those conversations. Started yesterday, and we're going to work on that and get it coordinated. We owe that to the American people. But I do want to say one thing, point of personal privilege. There's been a lot of stuff flying around over the last week. And, I hope I demonstrated that we did have a plan. We did want to work together with our whole team to figure out how to land the plane, but that it was important to get a lot of these things locked down. And frankly, the ones who are being pilloried, the guys who said no back in December, were the reason we were able to actually get to the place where we got something done. And I haven't seen as much unity as I saw yesterday or 2 days ago in the Republican conference meeting as I saw this week. And I'm telling you, it was healthy.
So, Congressman, I was upset that it took so long to get to the negotiation, but I always exempted you and anyone who would go with you when the deal was struck. The 6 who didn't go, they're not ever going to show up here, and we don't need to debate their merits or non-merits. I want to look forward. I want to look at what happens next. And now I want to go to the Bureau. I worked with the FBI when I was at DOJ. You worked with the FBI when you were at the Assistant United States Attorney for the Eastern District of Texas, Steve Cox's old haunts. And so the Bureau has got a lot of great people. Right now, Chinese espionage is a big deal in the United States. If we whack the FBI, I want to whack the people who are telling Twitter what to suppress, and I want to plus up the number of agents on counterintelligence. How are you going to whack it carefully?
That's the important role of the Weaponization Committee under Jim Jordan and the Judiciary Committee on which I serve. I'm with you. Look, I am pro law enforcement focusing on the things they're supposed to focus on. I worked, as you just pointed out, with the FBI when I was going after bad guys with guns and going after drug traffickers, and I worked with all aspects of our federal law enforcement. And I want to support the 90+% who are great folks. What we want to end is the politicization and the wokeification of it. There's also areas there where they're engaged in areas they shouldn't be, right? Labeling parents as domestic terrorists and crap like that. Like, there are places to go cut where there are programs that need to be cut. And at the center of the FBI and DOJ, it's more about repurposing their mission and making sure they're all going after the actual bad guys, doing what they need to do. There's a lot more fluff to cut in other areas of our federal government. But we can go back to 2019 levels and do what we need to do. The Weaponization Committee under Jim on the Judiciary Committee, we will highlight the bad stuff. We will target it and set ourselves up over the next 2 years to try to constrain it through the power of the purse. But more importantly, Lord willing, a Republican president in January of 25.
That all makes sense to me. Let me switch on my last question with you, Congressman Roy, to the regular order and appropriations. We have our first pressure point with the debt ceiling. You guys will get to one ask. I will help amplify it. But then we have the Appropriations Committee have got 15 different bills they've got to move, and they got to get sent to the Senate. Why can't we do that early so that we can frame those debates the same way that this debate will be framed? Because the way that Ken Calvert's a very dear friend of mine. I think he's a very good appropriator, Cardinal. Why can't we get this done in a hurry? Why do we have to work on the old Washington schedule?
Well, look, we agree. This is a part of the conversation that came out of last week. It was part of what one of our demands was getting those 12 bills done. It was part of what our demands was, which is offering amendments to the appropriations process to be able to cut spending on the floor. that will open it up and empower rank and file, frankly, to push back on some of those cardinals, even on our side of the aisle. Yesterday, we got a couple of more conservatives added to the Appropriations Committee. That's a good thing. That was a part of our debates last week. And look, we're committed to getting that forward. Now, the Senate hasn't done this in ages. So they all just sit over there, do nothing, and then they play brinksmanship right up to the end. We're going to try to call them out on that. We also have another plan, which is once we get the appropriations bill through this spring, we will send over a CR attached to it or kind of along with it that would say, if you guys don't get this done, we've got a CR in place that will fund government at 98% of last year's levels. Now, that would be a cut. Yeah, a haircut. But that would then force them to want to come to the table to get the appropriations bills done, but you couldn't make the shutdown argument against it. So
does that
we're going to try to deploy.
Does that CR exempt defense?
No, that would be an across the board. But that
oh God, Chip Roy, we can't do that. We can't do that.
Right, Hugh. You go tell Chuck Schumer then what he's going to do. In other words, look, the Senate would have to pass it. So what's likely going to occur, because the Democrats in the Senate aren't going to work with us, likely, is that we'll end up with a CR, which means your defense levels will stay flat. But we have to force them to the table. The only way to force them to the table is to be able to message the American people what we're going to do to limit spending and to hold it in check while also promoting a strong appropriations package for defense and for Homeland Security and for the things the American people want us to do.
Chip, please hear me. Chip, please hear me. I got 2 kids on active duty, right? I've got a nephew on active duty. You cannot use a CR for defense. The Pentagon does not work on the CR. You know that. I know that. We're in 1940 and you guys are screwing around with defense.
You go get Chuck Schumer on your show then.
No. This is owned by the Republicans. This is what the House can do since we won the House, and you guys can fashion a package.
How are you going to get that through the Senate? Walk me through how you're going to get an appropriations package through the Senate.
You send over the CR like you just said, but you exempt defense from the cuts of the 98%. You take it out of everywhere else, and you get the guts. I use the civilized term to put some entitlement reform in there and raise the retirement age to 67. And you stand back and you argue we're for a strong defense and a sane budget. You can win that, but you will lose.
And we will send over an appropriations package that funds defense at the levels it's supposed to fund it at, which will be at last year's or higher. That's what we will do. We will then send over the rest of the appropriations package. We will then send over a CR to the Senate. And look, we can debate those levels. If we can get the appropriations for defense passed, which we should, and hammer them to get it done before September, then we can have a debate about the rest of the levels and hold the CR at a 98% haircut, 99% haircut, whatever we choose. But the point is, you got to have leverage to push back on them that the non-defense discretionary is going to get cut.
I agree with you. I agree with you. But please, Congressman, keep coming back, because the one thing on which you will cripple our presidential candidate if you cripple defense, because our presidential candidate is going to be running on China. You know that. I know that. It's 1940. We can't act like it's 1989 in defense.
Hey, Hugh, the difference is in 1940, we didn't have GDP to debt well over 100%. We got that after World War II because we've been an irresponsible bunch of idiots in this town. So now we have a 2-front war, debt and China, and we better get busy doing it.
I agree. Win both fronts. But the first front that's coming to kill Americans is China. Not our debt, China. But Congressman, I really appreciate your taking 25 minutes with me. Keep coming back. Always a pleasure. I think you conducted yourself honorably, transparently, and I think you become a force for reason in Washington, D.C. as a consequence. Thank you, Congressman Roy.
Thank you.